Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we're reviewing Anthony Edwards' season, his first ever All-NBA campaign, and he improved a ton this year, especially in the playmaking department. We'll also talk about some of the areas he could still improve. Off-ball defense, once again. Also some areas of efficiency he can still unlock on offense. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today we are completing our player review series. We did Karl-Anthony Towns yesterday, the rest of the starters, key bench players last week. Today, it's Anthony Edwards. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons. Of course, far more pros than cons, but hey, there's always room to improve, and the sky truly is the limit with Anthony Edwards. I think the discourse got off the rails a bit on both sides of things regarding Ant in the playoffs. I always like to dig into some of these narratives that are out there. So I want to, put some actual numbers and context behind how much he improved this year, because it was a massive amount. And then also how much more he still has to go. And again, I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it multiple times on the show today. The sky truly is the limit with Anthony Edwards. We'll talk about areas where he was much better this year, areas where he may have been better, but there's still room to improve, and areas that he still struggles in somewhat within his game. So we'll get to all that here today. And also, real quick, tomorrow is our first episode where we're going to focus on the draft. The first round is a week from tomorrow, which means a week from tomorrow, the Timberwolves will be picking 27th, and then they have a top 10 second round pick as well, which is a week from Thursday. So lots to get to draft related. We'll spend the next week doing that starting tomorrow. A big thank you here off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV, and you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right. So year 4 of Anthony Edwards. And I think the best place to start here is coming into this season, because of the way he finished his third year in the league, which was some impressive playoff performances against Denver in the 5-game first-round loss after the Wolves lost and then won in the play-in with the 8 seed. The year prior, he played well in the playoffs against Memphis. He, of course, had his first All-Star nod came in the 22-23 season as well. And so everybody saw this as like, hey, what's the next frontier for Ant? He's played so well on the big stage. What's going to happen next? And then, of course, that was followed by the Team USA performance last year in FIBA, which was also outstanding. And the hype machine was already pretty hyped up for Anthony Edwards coming into this season, when in reality, and we talked about this on the show a year ago, the actual production of Ant's third season wasn't all that much better than what he'd done in year 2. There were some areas he took a slight step backwards from year 2 to year 3. He shot less threes. He shot more mid-range shots. He turned the ball over more frequently while not really increasing his assist rate. And the off-ball defense was not good, and the on-ball defense was inconsistent. All that to say, I thought he deserved to be an all-star last year, and much of the hype following the Team USA performance was deserved. This year, the year went pretty according to plan, other than some of the weird all-star weekend stuff. And then, of course, the John Collins dunk happens. This isn't like, I don't know, there's more moments in there, right? The John Collins moment happens, the dunk. The Indiana Pacers, the block against the Pacers, which was just insane, and my favorite play of the year, bar none. And then, of course, the playoffs. And now all of a sudden, the Michael Jordan comparisons are coming fast and furious from everywhere. And Ant himself is, one moment will not shy away from it. The other moment he'll say, I'm my own person. I thought Ant handled it well because, again, we're talking about a 22-year-old that's being compared to the greatest player of all time, one of the greatest team sports players of all time, full stop, in Michael Jordan. and one of the most famous people in the world, not just athlete, but people in the world. And Ant, I thought, handled it well for 22-year-old on a team that had never even won a playoff series when this stuff started. It's obviously been going on longer, but it became like it was no longer sacrilegious to say it, to make the comparison. When you're seeing it happen on ESPN shows and you're seeing it happen across podcasts, and it's no longer just a meme, it's a thing. And I acknowledged at the time, said like, hey, the comparisons to Ant's ceiling to what Michael Jordan was actually are not impossible. It's a real thing that could happen. Right now would have been Michael Jordan's rookie year in the NBA, because he played at obviously a full college career at North Carolina, whereas Ant only played 1 year of college. But also Michael Jordan was better from day one than Ant has been from day one. Michael Jordan was like immediately an amazing player. And he went from really, really good all-star level type player his first couple years to the best player of all time. Ant went from a below average player as a rookie, good for a rookie, but that's how good MJ was as a rookie, to now he is legit one of the best 15, probably best 12 players in the entire NBA, was a second team all NBA player this year. And he earned it. I'm not diminishing that at all. But to act like a 22-year-old Anthony Edwards is already what Michael Jordan was, even at 22, is disingenuous. Could he get there? It's possible. He legitimately is that talented. And that's the lens we have to look at this season through. Let's not get caught up in tired Ant against Dallas, because that's the other thing, right? It swings too far. That's how this pendulum works. That's how every pendulum works, actually. This is a pendulum right now. The Anthony Edwards is MJ to Anthony Edwards can't handle the big moment. He can't, he's got to be a leader. He can't be tired, blah, 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 whatever all the narratives are out there. And as always, I'm here to tell you that the answer is somewhere in the middle. And yeah, it'd be great if Ant's conditioning was to the point where he could play 40 minutes in the playoffs and not be grabbing at his knees, grabbing at his shorts, at the end of the first half in a playoff game. But the reality is he's a 22-year-old that's never been in this spot before, and he's been doing everything for this team. And was being asked to guard Kyrie Irving, which is a really tough thing to do, and then also carry the load offensively. And that speaks to a lot of different things, and not just Anthony Edwards, also his teammates and the game plan and the coaching staff. So we have to acknowledge that Ant still had an incredible season, and we can't let the Dallas series cloud that. And even still, the overall line for Ant in the playoffs was great. 28 points, 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists on 48, 40, and 81 shooting splits. Absolutely. It was awesome in the playoffs, regardless of how it ended. So I don't want to get too caught up in the narratives. What I want to do today, the rest of the show, I want to spend most of it on offense. I'll spend a little bit of time on defense, because there's some numbers that kind of back up the concern about his off-ball defense. We'll talk a little defense. We'll talk a lot of offense. I'll talk about his shot selection, the playmaking, all the stuff that Ant legitimately did better this year. Because he did improve in a lot of areas. There's no question. And no matter where you look, the advanced stats will all tell you Anthony Edwards had a phenomenal year, especially compared to last season. He was I thought he deserved to be an all-star last year, but, there were some holes in his game that certainly weren't all NBA worthy. This year, he absolutely deserved to both be an all-star and a second-team all-NBA player. There's no question about it. And I want to talk about the areas where he improved the most, the areas where he improved the least, the areas in which he can still improve next year. I mean, he's only going to be 23. He turns 23 in August. That could take him from a very good player to legitimately a solid top 10 player in the NBA. We're not that far off. He can do it next year. If he makes a leap like he did this year, next year, then he's probably a top 5 player. Like that's the sort of leap he made this season. So I want to break all that down, both sides of the ball. We'll do all of that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors over at FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Of course, right now, pretty good idea who the Finals MVP is going to be. But you can still bet that over at FanDuel on the sportsbook. You can also look at, as I mentioned, baseball odds as well. Sitting here right now, and I'm recording this before Game 5 of the Finals. The The Celtics are, of course, still a massive favorite across the board, both in tonight's game and to win the series. The line is, I lost it. Here we go. The Celtics are 6.5-point favorites back at home for Game 5 this evening. The money line for the Mavs is 220 over on FanDuel. So go check that out. And again, $200 you can use to bet everything for the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. All you got to do is place a $5 bet that wins. You get $200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. So Anthony Edwards improved in a lot of areas this year. And the first one I want to focus on is his overall playmaking. And there's no comparison to what he did this year as a playmaker to what he had done over the first 3 years. Maybe the best place to look, just look at his just straight up assist rate, which if you're not familiar with rate-based stats, is just the percentage of teammate field goals that he assisted on as a player while he's on the floor. So this year, his assist percentage was nearly 25%, which means nearly 1 out of every 4 shots that his teammates made with him on the floor was assisted by Anthony Edwards. And that number has increased every single year of his career. As a rookie, it was 14.5%, went to 17.5%, went to just over 19% last year. And this season, it was 24.6%, which was a jump of 5.3%, by far his biggest year-over-year jump. Along with that, his turnover rate dropped. His turnover rate dropped while his assist rate went up more than 5 points. The turnover rate dropped by 1.1 point. And the lowest turnover rate since his rookie year, when he was just used a little bit less and he wasn't really playmaking, he was just ISO scoring. His turnover rate was lower than it was each of the last 2 seasons. And his usage rate was up more than 2 points, almost 2.5 points. So his usage rate has steadily increased and his assist rate has steadily increased, but yet the turnover rate plummeted. Now, the shooting efficiency wasn't all that much better, but it was still better. Like, he still overall shot the ball better this season, mostly because he was so good at the well, I take that back. It depends on what metric you want to use. The effective field goal percentage was basically flat. His true shooting percentage was up because he shot more free throws. And that's super important. And so that's all part of the conversation we're having right now. And he also shot the ball so much better at the line. So effective field goal percentage was down slightly. True shooting was up slightly. The point is, the usage rate increases and the assist rate increases with a decreasing turnover rate and flat efficiency. It was just an incredible jump this year for Anthony Edwards. Also, some other things to look at playmaking wise. And by the way, this is, to me, the easiest way to look at it is just, it's very rare to see a player improve assist rate, increase the usage rate, and yet the turnover rate goes down and the efficiency doesn't suffer. And that's what we saw here. Yes, he shot the ball slightly worse from 3, 1.2 points less, 1.2 percentage points worse from 3 on slightly lower attempts. But again, he got to the line more, he shot it better at the line, and the 2-point percentage was effectively flat this year. Our friends at B-Ball Index, who I like to bring up when we're doing these player reviews, have a measure of playmaking a lot of different ways. I actually talked about this pretty extensively related to Karl-Anthony Towns on Monday's show. But Ant's efficiency improved pretty dramatically this season. So if you go back and look at, well, actually, let's start here. So this season, Anthony Edwards, let's see, what's the best stat to take first? We'll take passing creation quality first. So passing creation quality, if I can, it's a tongue twister. Passing creation quality is assists by range on the court, as well as conversion rates on potential assists on passes from that player versus those same players on passes from teammates. It captures the quality of shot opportunities created via the pass by a player. So compared to the rest of his teammates, how quality were the looks that Ant was getting his teammates? This year, his percentile in passing creation quality on B-Ball Index was 92nd percentile. That's an A, excuse me. It's up from 81st percentile and A- last year. So that's up 11 points in terms of percentile this year for Anthony Edwards. Passing creation quality. Box creation, which is an estimate of open shots carved out for teammates by drawing defensive attention. So this is a little bit different. This is basically his gravity. It's another way of looking at gravity. This year, he was 97th percentile in box creation, according to B-Ball Index, an A+. Last season, he was 93rd percentile in A. So obviously, both of these metrics, he was still good last year, but he took, I don't know if this is a leap, maybe a mini leap this season. Passing versatility, another area. This takes passing data on assist locations to gauge who's passing for what types of looks to reward more well-rounded passers. He's only 52nd percentile there, but that's up over 44th percentile last year. So that's another area in which he improved. Passing creation volume was largely flat from last year, down slightly, but again, the totality of this thing shows that he improved in terms of his overall playmaking. His overall playmaking talent last year, according to B-Ball Index, was 81st percentile, and I talked about this with Kat yesterday, but that takes into account all of it. Passing creation volume, passing efficiency, passing spread, the passing creation quality, and scoring gravity we talked about earlier. This year, 87th percentile. Last year, 81st percentile, so he improved there as well. Really, really impressive for Anthony Edwards to improve in all of these areas in terms of his playmaking. Also, this is just a little bit more of a raw, kind of quick and dirty metric. Total points from assists per 75 possessions. So how many points did the Wolves generate for across 75 possessions on average based on his passes? This year, that value is a 13.6, which is 85th percentile. That's an A- league-wide. Last year, it was 76th percentile, a B+. Just the number of points per 75 possessions was nearly 3 points better this year from Anthony Edwards. So more assists and more efficient and effective assists from Anthony Edwards. There's no denying that he improved dramatically as a playmaker this year, no matter how you slice it. And that, to me, is my favorite Ant improvement. And it's probably the first thing when I was asked on different shows last fall about, like, what does Ant need to improve? It was always off-ball defense and playmaking on picking his spots to score versus playmake for others, and also decreasing that turnover rate a little bit. He did all of that well this year. We'll talk about off-ball defense here in a minute. There was maybe less improvement there. Certainly less improvement there, I should say. But in terms of playmaking, assist rate up, turnover rate down, usage rate up, efficiency stays. Let's talk about shot selection. This is I think every bit as big of a conversation, and then we'll talk about defense. Unfortunately, we saw his three-point attempt rate decrease for the third consecutive season, but we also saw his free throw rate increase for the third consecutive season. So if you just look at those numbers, you assume that means he's shooting the ball more at the rim, and obviously it does mean he's shooting the ball less from outside the arc. In actuality, the percentage of his field goal attempts at the rim went down, and part of that's because he was getting fouled a bunch, and so if you get fouled and you don't make the shot, it doesn't count as a field goal attempt, of course, right? But it was down drastically. It was down 7 points. It was by far Ant's the least amount of field goal attempts at the rim. His highest was his rookie year. His second highest was last season. This year, only just under 23% of his field goal attempts came within 3 feet of the rim. And the overall distance on his shot attempts, according to Basketball Reference, average distance of his field goal attempts it increased this year to over 14 feet, and he shot less threes. What does that mean? Well, obviously, he shot more long twos, more mid-range jumpers. Not a good thing. But at the same time, the free throw rate increased. So some things good here, some things not so good, some things more neutral. So I want to dig into basically what are the quality of those shot attempts, and what does he need to do? What's the next frontier here? Where can he tweak this? As fun as the Kobe and the MJ memes and all that stuff is with the mid-range turnarounds, and even almost kind of like a Kevin Garnett-like mid-range turnaround, it's great, and you can pull it out of the bag if you need it at the end of a shot clock or whatever, fine. But how can he just tweak that shot selection a little bit, shoot a few more threes, get to the rim a little bit more, increase the efficiency while all the other stuff stays the same? And we're talking superstar to mega superstar, super duper star, whatever you want to call it, top, going from top 12, 13 player in the league to a top 5 or 6 player in the league. That's what he needs to do next. I want to dig into those numbers a little bit, and we'll close by talking about some of Ant's defense. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's talk about Anthony Edwards and his scoring efficiency that he has yet to unlock. I talked about how overall he got to the line a lot more often, and by and large, the efficiency numbers maintained themselves. And again, I'll kind of rattle that off quickly here. The true shooting percentage went up. It's gone up consistently each year. That's because the free throw rate has gone up and the free throw percentage has gone up. So again, true shooting takes into account 2-pointers versus 3-pointers plus free throws. It's gone up every year of his career. And that's one of my favorite metrics to measure a player's efficiency. And metrics, not really a metric. Well, yeah, I guess it is. But it's not like it's a proprietary stat. But it's a really good way of measuring efficiency. If we look at effective field goal percentage, that's maintained itself mostly flat the last 3 years. It had gone up incrementally the first 3 seasons, but now this year it took a slight hit at 0.06, 0.6 of a percentage point worse. And that's just because he didn't shoot the ball quite as well from 3. Last season, he was 36.9% from 3. This year is 35.7, which is the same percentage he shot in his second year in the league. However, overall, the offensive efficiency was better. The 2-point field goal percentage went up slightly. The overall field goal percentage went up slightly. The free throw percentage went up 8 points. And however you want to measure his free throw rate, it went up. It went in the right direction. It was the free throw rate itself was 5 points higher. The free throws attempted per 36 minutes, if that's your jam, was up 1.3 free throw attempts per 36 minutes per 100 possessions. It was up 1.9, the biggest jump of his career. And he's now up to shooting 9 free throw attempts per 100 possessions. As a rookie, he was 5.5 free throw attempts per 100 possessions. And again, he went from shooting between 75 and 78% to almost 84% this year from the line. We saw that number decrease slightly in the playoffs, but it was still 81%. There was some untimely misses, I should say, in the second 2 rounds of the Denver round and the Dallas round. But for the most part, though, all of that maintained itself in the playoffs for Anthony Edwards. So it's actually really not all that complicated. Overall, he's sacrificed some 3-point shots for mid-range shots and a few rim attempts for 3-point shots. Some of that efficiency he's clawed back because he's gotten to the line so frequently. But to see a 7% less of his shot attempts coming within 3 feet of the rim is concerning. And I've already acknowledged, like, some of that is yes, because he's getting fouled more often. But we also see the field goal attempt percentage increase in the 3 to 10 range, the 10 to 16 range. It increased a ton, and slightly in the 16 to 3-point range, 3-point attempt range. He attempted 5% more of his shots this year from the 10 to 16 foot range, which is not great. Now, his efficiency improved by 6 points in that range. He actually went from 38% to 44%, and he's gotten better every year with that mid-range jumper. But 44% from 15 feet is much worse than 36, 37% from outside the arc. It just is. And usually the nature of the 10 to 16 footer is it's going to be contested. And Ant shoots much better outside the arc. Well, I should say he's more efficient, as anybody is, from outside the arc than a contested 10 to 16 footer. I'm not going to get too in the weeds on closely guarded versus open versus wide open. All those different, you can do that at NBA.com/stats, but he's good when he's guarded. And 44% from that range isn't bad. It's okay, but it's not efficient enough. It's not Kevin Durant-like. It's not making a compelling enough case where Chris Fitch is going to say, yeah, Ant, shoot more from 15 feet. I'm harping on this, and this is the same thing I did with Cat related to offensive rebounding, and a couple other things. Was like, hey, if he just does this, that's an extra point and a half a game, and his efficiency will go up. It lifts his profile. It lifts the team's offense. With Ant, just take one or two of those 10 to 16 footers, make one of them an attempt at the rim and one of them an attempt outside the arc. And I know it's not a zero-sum game, and like he could just shoot the ball more, and like it depends on who the opponent is. Certainly depends on who else is on the floor. There's all sorts of noise here, right? But you take the body of work from the season, and Anthony Edwards improved significantly across the board. But there's so much room for improvement still with Anthony Edwards. If we go back to B-ball index numbers in terms of his shooting, off-ball movement is fine. Of course, he has the ball in his hands a lot. His perimeter shooting marks are all between a B and an A. His catch and shoot three-point percentage this year was 45.2%. And this is the strongest argument maybe not but one of the strongest arguments for finding a secondary creator and shot creator and shot maker. And this came up a bunch. It came up on the postcast immediately following the season. I did it with Luke Inman and Jack Borman on YouTube. It came up on the Minnesota basketball party last Wednesday. It came up on this show. For the Wolves to have somebody who can flourish with the ball in their hands in the backcourt. That's not Mike Conley, because at this point, Mike Conley is far more effective as a catch and shoot guy and also can initiate some offense overall, but not super dynamic. Still very valuable, not at all diminishing Conley. But like, I mean, look at the Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic thing. Now, I'm not at all suggesting the Wolves need another, backcourt superstar in the vein of Kyrie Irving. And that's an extreme example. But Anthony Edwards, when he plays off the ball, he's a 45% catch and shoot three-point shooter. Pull-up three-point shooter, he's 35%. He's 10 percentage points better. Actually, more than that, 10.3 percentage points better. He goes from a 70th percentile pull-up three-point shooter, which is fine. He's good. 1 and 3 is great. That's not great. It's okay. We'll take it. But 45%. He's 93rd percentile in catch and shoot three-point shots. He's 78th percentile above the break three-point attempts. And overall, again, just a shade under 38% this year, 76th percentile in terms of outside the arc shooting. Ant playing off the ball more often, a few possessions here and there, is still going to be super dynamic and playing off the catch. And we saw this a little bit more in the playoffs out of necessity when Ant was getting double and triple teamed and the ball was being forced out of his hands. And we saw this with success against Phoenix and at times against Denver, where the ball was moving, coming back to Ant, and he was getting the open catch and shoot three, or he was getting the pump fake and drive to the rim. Playing off the catch, because he's getting off the ball early in the possession, will be super valuable for Anthony Edwards. And the Wolves getting another playmaker, somebody else that can be the straw that stirs the drink in the backcourt and also get their own shot, will be super beneficial for Anthony Edwards moving forward. Overall this year, Ant sacrificed some rim attempts, and three-point shots for some mid-range shots. And he was still so good that he massively improved his offensive floor this season. There's no question about that. Lastly, defense. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. He was solid on the ball. We know that. He even had some second all-defensive team votes that he got. I thought his perimeter defense was good. I maybe expected even a little bit more out of him. He got some, was really active in passing lanes, had good steal rate. Steals per 75 possessions was an A- according to B-ball index. He had a good pickpocket rating, but off the ball, all those metrics were still subpar for Anthony Edwards. His passing lane defense, according to B-ball index, was a D, 31st percentile. That's how active a defender is in the passing lanes, which is bad pass steals plus deflections per 75 possessions. He was a D. Deflections per 75 possessions was a C. And defensive miles per 75 possessions was bad. It was 4% below league average. 15th. Well, yeah. That's what it was. 4% below league average. And last season, that mark wasn't any better. He was 5% below league average. And he had a few more deflections. Some of the off-ball activity last year actually rated out a little bit better. His passing lane defense was actually a B+ last year, whereas this year it was a D. So based on some of these metrics, his off-ball defense regressed a little bit. The on-ball defense, I think, probably improved, but it's the same story, where if he's guarding somebody that he wants to lock down, that he knows is going to be, I don't mean this to denigrate Ant, but it just is what it is. He gets up for these matchups that if he defends well, it's going to be making the rounds on Twitter. It's going to be making the rounds on the highlight shows on ESPN, whatever. But if there's nights where he could take a night off, quote unquote, take a night off defensively, he will. And sometimes that's okay. LeBron's a lot older. LeBron deserves it at this point. But like the guys do it. You can do it. You can't have Ant doing like what he did that got him worn out in the playoffs all the time. But there could be somewhere in between some other level of consistency that Ant can find, hopefully, that he's not always hot or cold. He's not always just like, gate to gate, crazy, in your face, but also not always just like cold, not paying attention, getting back cut on, which we've seen also. We saw that really bad possession in the pivotal, I think it was game 3 against Dallas, where he lost the corner 3-point shooter. I think it was, who was it? Derek Jones Jr., I think. Just completely lost him. Lost his assignment. They were trying to hide him, to save some mileage for Ant, and he lost the shooter. It was a big possession in transition, and the Wolves, ultimately lost that game. There's room for improvement there for Anthony Edwards. And even like, when I did the Cat show on Monday, Cat's defensive miles per 75 possessions was a positive. It was above league average. And all these other guys we talked about, Jaden and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and even Conley, like these guys all had plus defensive miles per 75 possessions, and we're not there with Ant in terms of consistency. I think there's a happy medium. I think there's some nights he can cool it a little bit, but there's also some nights that need him to turn it up. And he needs to have enough left to be able to turn it up in the playoffs. All right. So playmaking improved dramatically. The efficiency stayed the same at the same time. I think the shot efficiency can be tweaked a little bit. He can be even better. He was good on ball defensively. He was a little bit worse off the ball defensively. That needs to improve next year. The sky truly is the limit for Anthony Edwards. And I mean that. I mean, he could be one of the best players of all time if he truly reaches that ceiling. I don't hesitate in saying that. The tools are all there. The want to is there. The passion is there. The energy, all of the above. And he made a massive improvement year 3 to year 4. We'll have to see what's in store for year 5. I'm excited about it. Tomorrow's show, Wednesday's show, we're going to start talking draft. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's draft shows. The first round is a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday. Second round, a week from Thursday. The Wolves have picks 27 and 37, so tons to get to related to the draft. A big thank you for making today's show, Locked On Wolves, your first listen every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.